I'm happy to welcome Larry Roseman, CFO of Thumbtack, which is a Fund 2 portfolio company that we invested in 2019. Larry, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
We
It's
really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
It's good to see you.
Awesome. So we'll cover a variety of different things today, but maybe just for those who are unfamiliar with Thumbtack, can you talk a little bit, just give us kind of the high level what Thumbtack does and why it matters?
So Thumbtack is the trusted place for home services. Thumbtack is the place where homeowners go to confidently care for their home and improve their home. We have a network of over 300,000 local professionals in every zip code and county in the United States. And last year we had over 4.5 million customers, businesses at scale.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Thumbtack. So just the quick thing we were talking about a little bit before. So as a customer that I've been since, I guess, 2019 or so, I've now had 38 projects done. So I'm hopeful that I'm a power user.
Thank you.
Actually.
So, I got you beat.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually interesting because I remember I was listening to another podcast that you're on, and it sounded like at the company, which is now about more than 1,000 employees, that everybody uses Thumbtack, right?
Yeah.
In terms of their experience.
One of the perks we have is Thumbtack Bucks. So everybody gets $450 a quarter to do a project, be the customer.
Yeah, that's exciting. So when I remember when we first invested in the company, the coverage, so to speak, in terms of the types of services that Thumbtack offered for consumers was actually much broader. You can get a wedding planner or a DJ and things like that. Talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of kind of the offering now. Obviously, things are much more focused on sort of home care and home services. And so how did that kind of evolve as the business grew?
Yeah, we're in 500 categories now. So pretty much every home category you could think of, but the umbrella is just home. And you're right. When the business first started, it was sort of all local, right? So you could find wedding planners and things like that on it. And it naturally the business sort of just gravitated towards home.
Yeah.
And, now we're probably, 85, 90% home. We haven't completely deprecated those categories, but all of the sort of branding and focus and product is built just around the home. And the home, it's a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
It's $600 billion GMV in the United States alone. And it's a very, underpenetrated sector for a marketplace. So it naturally gravitated toward home. And then we really just decided to go whole hog and all in and really just start building and branding around just the homeowner.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you mentioned sort of the business model, right, in terms of Thumbtack as a marketplace. If you think about the category sort of back in, say, 2015, and as things evolved, there was kind of initially sort of the classifieds, right? And then kind of the lead gen businesses, which I think, maybe Yelp or Angie's List could kind of fit in that. And now Thumbtack is kind of more of this kind of true marketplace. Walk me through kind of that evolution. Like, how is that different in terms of just the consumer experience, the pros? How do you think about kind of scaling those two things?
Yeah. For the consumer, this is a place where you go to find and hire a pro.
Yeah.
It's where you go to kind of diagnose what needs to be done, match to the right relevant pro, and then get the job done. So it's not just I'm going to some listing site and then I have to do a bunch of work. This is actually, we're closing the loop there. And, for the pros, we're focused on jobs done, so on outcomes. So this is not a platform. We don't have a subscription model. We're not paying, pros aren't paying for exposure.
Right.
It is really a curated, highly intentful match. And the value we provide to our pros is that we're really focused on providing them with jobs, not leads.
Right. It's interesting because I know whenever I go to solve a problem, like where it's a plumber or my microwave is broken, whatever it might be, one of the things I always found to be really interesting is as soon as I basically posted that, like I kind of said, this is my problem, I think within the span of minutes, I would actually get 3 or 4 responses from the pros that I chose to kind of reach out to. That's kind of like, Google is kind of like, how fast do we actually return search results? Like, is that something that sort of from a design perspective and an experience perspective that you kind of really thought about in terms of how that would work?
So I think it's actually one of the kind of secret sauces to our model is that pro response rate.
Yeah.
Our North Star metric is really hire rates, so number of requests and projects that turn into hires.
Right.
But on the responsiveness, the way that the marketplace works is we ask our pros to tell us exactly what they want in terms of what types of jobs.
The pros.
The pros.
Yeah, okay.
So with that data, we can then collect exactly what consumers are looking to do and then only surface pros that match on a very sort of high fidelity basis with what that request is.
Yeah.
And we charge our pros when we send them those introductions. So they are highly motivated at that point in time to convert and to get back to you. So it's actually a great thing for the marketplace because the pros are basically like voting with their dollars and basically saying, hey, you want this? We're going to send it to you. And then you're going to be incentivized to get back to those customers quickly.
And it's great for the consumer, right? Because they're getting an immediate response to somebody, to solve the problem, whatever it is that they're trying to solve for. One of the things I think was really interesting is that, when we talk about sort of marketplace business models, take rate's always a very big question. And if I remember correctly, that your model is actually structured around a bit of an auction dynamic.
Yeah.
Can you double click on that a little bit?
Yeah. And I also think this is one of the key business model things that differentiates us. So pros don't pay subscriptions. They don't pay for leads or exposure. What it is it's an auction system. So not dissimilar to sort of Google's, AdWords.
Right.
So pros are basically on a weekly basis telling us what they're willing to pay in any given category. At first, you would say, oh, pros may not love that, but actually it's a virtuous thing for the marketplace because interestingly, the better pros are the ones who can sort of pay more for the jobs.
Right.
They convert better. They usually have the better sort of ratings and reviews, and they have a sort of more successful overall experience.
Right.
So it's a virtuous thing where pros are paying more. It's leading to higher conversion. They're getting more intentful leads. They're converting better, getting the ROI on their spend.
Right.
So it's sort of a virtuous thing for the marketplace by having this sort of willingness to pay or auction-based model.
Right. So higher rate, kind of key North Star metric. When you think about kind of consumer behaviors, right, and driving sort of consumers back to, using Thumbtack to find sort of their next, whatever their issue is in their home, how do you think about measuring kind of that consumer sort of engagement? And I'm assuming that the classic kind of CAC LTV is a metric that you guys also track very carefully, probably on both sides.
We do. Higher rate is sort of the key metric, and what we find is that conversion from I have a job to be done to getting it done is the number one determinant of NPS for our customers. And we have extremely high LTV to CAC on the pro side, which then allows us to go reinvest those dollars to acquire customers for our pros.
Right.
So we're fortunate in that regard, but also being a kind of broad horizontal platform where we're not just offering you sort of one thing, enables us to cross-sell and have people do their repeat business in a separate category, which increases the LTV of the customer, which allows the unit economics to scale.
That's fascinating. So you've been with the company since 2020?
2020.
Talk about kind of the journey from sort of where were you before? What was it about Thumbtack that attracted you to the opportunity and, kind of where it is today?
Yeah. So I started my career as a public accountant. Then after business school, went into investment banking for a long time, too long. And then finally made the move from New York to the Bay Area, joined eBay in their corporate development team, leading M&A and investments. Did that up until sort of the separation of PayPal, which was sort of a seminal kind of moment for eBay. And then I transitioned into more kind of operating finance roles. So did a bunch of business unit CFO jobs, did a stint in corporate FP&A, and then joined eBay's classifieds business. And that took me to Amsterdam to be a CFO for one of those businesses. And I guess the theme for me that sort of led me to Thumbtack was, marketplace, but then the classifieds experience, local marketplace.
Right.
And when I got introduced to Marco, our founder, I always, when I think about opportunities, it's like strategy, team, and execution, right? And I really love the team, great investors, great board, great people, and they were solving this sort of unique problem of like you've got all this unstructured data, all this unstructured chaotic sort of requests, no SKUs like in a retail business or right, and using a technology to uniquely solve that. So that's kind of what attracted me to it, in addition to just the massive size and scale of the opportunity, and knowing that you look at these marketplace businesses, and this is single-digit market penetration in terms of digital penetration, knowing that that's not going to persist. This is not going to stay a paper and pencil industry, and eventually it's going to come online. And I felt Thumbtack was the company that can do that.
When you joined, what was sort of size-wise, number of employees, kind of scale, revenue?
So I joined in the depth of COVID, and we had just done a RIF. I mean, think about it. This is an in-person business.
Yeah.
So overnight, the business kind of went, cratered.
One of the things I know we'll talk about was sort of like, I think you'd said before, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
So COVID,
Yeah.
SVB,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Lots of different things. So talk just about a little bit about sort of the experience of sort of all those things that the company's kind of gone through. I mean, in terms of the macro,
Yeah.
and how you navigated through all of those.
Yeah, the never let a good crisis go to waste is, you work at one of these innovative type businesses that's really looking to change something big and make a dent. And, oftentimes that founder mindset is, growth at all costs. And that's
Right.
what it was for many, many years. Cost of capital was next to nothing. And there was very little sort of focus on profitable growth.
Yeah.
And I think the win for me and our company, and I'm sure many of your other portfolio companies, is profitable growth.
Yeah.
Right. And really focusing on not growth at all costs, take market share, but do it in a profitable way. Think about sort of long-term value creation, invest where you sort of need to, but really focus on getting your business to profitability, right? And I think that's something that I'm proud of that we've done, and never want to look back.
So, Marco, who's still founder and CEO, what was that dynamic like in terms of sort of changing, I guess, the ethos in which you managed the company and thought about sort of scaling? Was it a hard thing to do to get Marco to say, listen, capital's not free, right? We
Yeah.
need to find a way to get a profitable growth. Like, how do you interact with Marco now day to day?
Yeah.
And,
I don't think it was hard, but it was definitely, I think, a mindset shift.
Yeah.
And look, I think where we are now is, it's not growth at all costs, but it's not just scale EBITDA and become sort of like just a profit generating free cash flow
Right.
only. You still want to invest to grow, and
Yeah.
our mindset is, find positive NPV opportunities and invest in them.
Yeah.
And for different things, we have different payback periods, right? If it's marketing, it might be sort of a reasonable thing to say it's a year
Right.
till we get our bait back. But for longer term pools of capital, like product initiatives, it's longer. So, and Marco and I see eye to eye on this. It's sort of like if we have great investment opportunities that we think are going to be NPV positive and create value, we're going to invest in them, even
Yeah.
if it means sort of growing EBITDA more slowly than we
Right.
otherwise could.
How do you work through kind of those big bets, right? It's like, okay, we're going to invest in product to do this, right? Or, find a way to kind of make sure that, consumers are going to us first and foremost for everything with respect to home care. Like, it sounds like this NPV kind of calculus is really sort of the important sort of metric in terms of like, okay, we know how long we want to invest and think about the payback. Is that now sort of like a fairly well understood way of thinking about sort of making those bets and
I would say
balancing?
it's less math and spreadsheet. Like
Okay.
it's more of a, you can have the best spreadsheets in the world and they're going to be wrong, right?
Right.
So it is not a a DCF Excel thing for every sort of initiative.
And a whack for every project.
Right. It is just sort of a mindset around, how do we incentivize our innovation
Yeah.
and create an environment where you can put up sort of short-term wins each year and
Yeah.
continue to grow the business as much as you can for a marketplace
Yeah.
in a predictable way.
Yep.
But then also ring fence teams to be innovative, to do 0 to 1 work, to really transform the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I feel like through a capital allocation strategy that's value oriented, that is, not growth at all costs, but is also sort of, disciplined around how we invest. You're able to sort of toe that line between fostering innovation, investing in it, but also, putting up the numbers each year.
It's interesting. So I was hosting a dinner of a number of chief marketing officers recently. Actually, one of the big conversations at the dinner was that SEO and just search engine marketing is really, I mean, they're seeing meaningful changes, right, in the way in which they're acquiring customers. And I know like early days, Thumbtack was leveraging sort of, Google search as a way of sort of driving traffic.
Yep.
So in now this kind of world of AI, right, how has that kind of thought process changed in terms of how you adjust to kind of, where consumers are?
As it relates to sort of AI, we think that this is a kind of watershed moment for us and for the category. And I think that AI can do for our business what, mobile did for delivery and ride sharing. So we are seeing it transform the entire product experience.
Wow.
both from the sort of diagnosis and search to the matching component to how we really close the loop and get all the way to outcomes for our pros.
Yeah.
And then on these partnerships. So yeah, we announced something with OpenAI. Last week we announced something with Alexa Plus. What's interesting is we have a really set of valuable data that is just not available anywhere else on the internet.
Yeah.
So think about our ratings, our reviews, photos of jobs done, pro preferences, pro availability, pricing, all that data,
Yeah.
which is not available. So we're partnering with all of these consumer AI companies to basically provide that last mile connectivity,
Right.
that final amount of data in order to sort of integrate and provide a great customer experience. So we see it as a huge opportunity and a huge tailwind for the business going forward.
Shifting gears once again, when you think about kind of obviously companies at scale, what's your kind of philosophy on leadership and management now that you're managing a pretty big organization? And I guess that would apply to not just the people that kind of work under you, but also how do you think about sort of, board governance, managing the board, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to one tenet of my kind of leadership style, as it relates to how I think about my team and the company, and particularly my peers, is really to approach everything with like a curiosity. So a sort of learner's mindset. And I think that enables me to be vulnerable, right? I can admit when I don't know something and I'm curious to sort of learn more. I think that curiosity enables me to ask questions in a way that, I don't have to sort of come in with a hot point of view or a hot take.
Right.
I can really try to understand where people are coming from. And I find that builds trust. It sort of acknowledges and lets people be heard and seen for like, okay, here's what you're solving for, right?
Yeah.
So just that curiosity in terms of asking questions and having that learner's mindset, I think is extremely valuable with my team and with my peers. As it relates to the board, I view my role as being the, it's dual, right? So I want to make sure that in that room, they're getting a straight shooter.
Yeah.
They're getting someone who is calling balls and strikes and sort of not sugarcoating things, telling it like it is. But at the same time, I want to show up as the type of partner to the business that is growth oriented,
Right.
and really sees the opportunity and wants to invest in the opportunity and is not afraid to take risks when we see great opportunities.
Yeah. Has that much, it sounds like that leadership mindset hasn't really changed since you first got there, right? I mean, that's sort of been pretty consistent.
I think so.
Are the challenges of management sort of different now that you've just got such a much bigger organization, or is it really just like stick to those principles and we're going to be fine kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, like one thing that has stuck with me that when I think about, scaling regardless of size is kind of work ethic, right?
Yeah.
I always took pride and take pride in, you may not be the smartest person in the room, but like work hard. And, I hire people for grit, right? That's
Yeah.
I'd rather have grit than like fancy degrees.
Yep.
And that gives people the cover, right, to say, hey, if I work hard, if I try my hardest and I do my best, like I can sleep well at night.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. If you could go back to 2019 or 2020, I guess, when you joined, what would you tell yourself? Like if you were back in time, what would you tell yourself just starting at Thumbtack about what really matters?
Yeah. I think, well, one thing reflecting on that is, I got there and I was like, all right, we gotta be best in class in everything, right? We gotta have the best process and it's gotta be accurate. And, you want to sort of get to that world-class finance team overnight.
Right.
And I think what I would say is sometimes you gotta go slow to go fast, right? You gotta crawl, walk, run. You have to hire the right people. You got to put in the right process and systems so that you then can actually scale. And I think that was, you can't brute force things forever. And sometimes you want to step back, put in place the right foundation so that you can ultimately scale.
Yeah. How is it that you leverage sort of the wisdom, I guess, of others, right? When you think about just sort of mentorship or just, who's kind of your cohort that you go to when you're like, I have a problem and I need to figure this out?
Well, the founders circle, CFO circle is the thing, right? Honestly, it has been one of, if not the most valuable resources that I have been fortunate and grateful to be a part of.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
Over this period of time. It's a great group. You guys do an amazing job at curating that stuff. And, it is like phone a friend, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you have a problem, anytime you have a technical question, anytime and it's all sort of like, confidential. And I just feel like it is the most valuable resource that I have, sort of hands down.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. And it's such a wonderful group of folks. And,
It really is.
I think that give to get mentality is something that's just been a part of that community for a long time, which is great to see. So, okay. So looking forward, obviously the company's doing great. It's interesting because a decade ago, you're probably a public company, right? And there's an interesting dynamic right now in sort of the market where you've got, the Stripes of the world. They're like, no, we're not going public, at whatever revenue they're at.
Yeah.
How do you think about sort of not when, but really just, what's the readiness for the company when you think like over the next 5 to 10 years about going public? Is that something that's on your minds these days?
Yeah. Look, I think we are fortunate in the sense that we don't need capital.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We are fortunate that our founder and our board are very long-term oriented and see the opportunity and the visions. There's a lot of alignment there.
Yeah.
I like to say to the company when I get asked this question, going public is easy. Being a successful public company is the hard part.
Yeah.
And you really have to step back and say, what are you solving for when you sort of cross that chasm? And one of the things that you're solving for is liquidity, broad-based liquidity. And private companies are staying private longer, and there are increasingly more ways to provide liquidity to early investors and employees. So we're not in a huge rush.
Right.
Obviously, I think we are, at scale, big enough, growing in the way that like we could. But yeah, we still have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of value to create. And there's no sort of like gun to our head, if you will, to do that.
Yeah. What's when you think about kind of the next 5 years? What does Thumbtack look like 5 years? Setting aside the IPO, or not IPO, but if you could wave a magic wand and say this is where we want the company to be in 5 years, what does that company look like?
So I mean, we've been taking significant market share over the last 5 years. So I anticipate we will continue to do that. I'd like to think within 5 years, we'll look back and say, yeah, we actually cracked the nut. And, we're the go-to place for homeowners to take care of their home.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a verb, right? So, yeah, I think the product evolution that we're going through now will enable us to accelerate that digital transformation.
Yeah.
We'll continue to have, market share, and you'll see a significant amount of these transactions being done through an intermediated marketplace like Thumbtack.
I love it. I can't wait for for it to be a verb. It's like just Thumbtack it.
Just Thumbtack it. Thumbtack it.
That's fantastic. Okay, one last final question that I ask everybody that we do these interviews with: are we in an AI bubble?
I'm sure we are in some way. There's just a ton of hype.
Yeah.
There's a lot of capital going into a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And not all of them are going to
make it.
Now, are we in sort of a systemic bubble where like that is going to have some ripple effect on the industry, on some other shoe to drop?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're in a moment, and it is sort of one of the more significant moments that we'll probably experience in our professional lives. And I think a lot of amazing stuff is going to come out of it.
I think what's fascinating about it is when you kind of just look at the hyperscalers, they're investing roughly $400 billion, kind of with views of investing trillions in sort of data center build out for this. And, I go back to sort of just what is the experience for the average consumer or enterprise that's sort of embracing these tools. And in a lot of cases, I mean, you just think about OpenAI at 800 million users. It's an amazing experience, right? And if I had to hazard a guess, anyone that's under 25 is probably not going to Google to do searches anymore. So there's just this interesting dynamic, right?
Yeah, I think it will be interesting how Google sort of navigates this shift.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count them out just yet.
Yeah, that's fair point. They've got quite a few assets that are pretty interesting. But anyway, well, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. And, look forward to Thumbtack becoming a verb.
Great to be
Thanks.
here. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.